Welcome back to College Football Addiction, Talking Balls, 977 ESPN's Drew D. Armand. Drew, a big one this week, and an Oklahoma team that's coming in that it presents an interesting matchup. How you doing, man? What are the vibes like around those parts?
Well, I think they're cautiously optimistic. It was an ugly game last week, unless you know football, and I it wasn't pretty offensively, but certainly, I thought they played their best complementary football of the season. I thought, I understand there's a 26-yard field goal miss, but Connor Talty made a 44 and 45-yarder. The last kick was huge because it put Alabama up 20-9 and kind of put LSU in a bind. You never felt like, at least with the way Alabama's defense was locked in, that LSU was going to score unless they hit a big play. And Alabama's been susceptible to that. But once that kick was made in the fourth quarter, you felt good about Alabama's chances of getting out of Bryant-Denny with a win. And it's a huge rivalry. And it's like I said on your show last week, TJ, I just felt like that LSU would show up. They'd play their best game. At least they'd play hard. And it wasn't their best game offensively by any stretch, but I thought defensively, Blake Baker had a really good plan, and then I thought they were solid in what they did, and I just thought Alabama did a nice job with the kicking game. Blake Dowd's really kind of under the radar, been really solid the last several weeks at punter, and after coming over from the School of Mines, a Division II school in Colorado, and he did a great job of pinning them deep at the 2-yard line. Now, LSU had a big drop on third down that probably would have moved the sticks, but that's football, and Alabama was able to get it back and basically use that to salt the game away. And I just thought overall it was a solid game. Alabama left some plays on the field offensively, no doubt. They had trouble connecting on the deep ball. I think people would feel a lot better if, like, for example, on back-to-back plays, Latsier Brooks in the second half and then Jeremy Bernard were missed. The germ throw to me was the more egregious because it was a perfectly called play, wide open. And earlier in the year, that's a layup touchdown for Ty, but he just slightly overthrew Germ. And if you hit that one, you're off to the races, and this probably ends up being a 31-9 game, something like that. But again, you'll take it if you're Alabama, and you beat a talented LSU squad by 11 at home. And again, and then I'll say this, and I've said it on my show, I've said it on some others. Under the radar, it may be good for Alabama because you got to sharpen things, your knives, so to speak, and iron sharpens iron, and you've got to be had to put together a good week of practice and game plan because you can't leave those kind of plays on the field against Oklahoma. Because this Oklahoma defense in many ways is better than LSU's. It's got a better pass rush, and they're the number one rushing defense in the SEC. And of course, the big topic for us this week has been Alabama's lack of running game and the lack of push. They were held to only just over 50 yards rushing in the game, I believe, on 19 attempts. But at this point in the season, you are who you are in some ways. Now, you may be able to get healthier and you may be able to have a guy like a Daniel Hill, in my opinion, develop an even bigger role. And I think he should. I think he should be RB1. I think he should get more touches than Jam Miller running the ball. I think they should both play. Both of them are really good pass receivers. But I just think when Daniel Hill's in the game, that their running game has clicked better this year and the offense as a whole. Now, I mean, what hurt Alabama from a continuity standpoint, as you know, with the Florida State opener, Jam Miller did not play. Daniel Hill didn't play a lot. They were both hurt, so they had to get healthier. But I think the key down the stretch for Alabama is they're not going to all of a sudden morph into a good running football team, but they need to be able to manufacture maybe 110, 120 yards rushing to have some semblance of balance to help Ty Simpson. And I think that's going to be a key on Saturday. I have watched enough of Oklahoma. I think they're susceptible to being thrown on if you can protect Ty. And Alabama has done that. Like, for example, Tennessee had a really good pass rush, but they kept Ty upright and they scored 37 points. Now, Tennessee's complete defense is not Oklahoma's, but I still think if Alabama can block them and give Ty some time, he can go to work. But a key to that is going to be trying to find some semblance of a running game. And I'm going to be interested to see what Ryan Grubb comes up with because I've been in these arguments on social media and even on my show. Is I think it's more personnel than scheme, and I just don't think Alabama. I think their offensive line and the running back rooms are average. Now I think the wide receivers and the quarterback are very very good, but the rest of it is a little average. So you've got to kind of figure some things out. And I think going forward, and I've said this on College Football Addiction. Jeremy Bernard is Alabama's best player, and I didn't think they tried to give him the ball enough against in the game against LSU. Certainly, if they'd hit that deep ball, he would have had over 100 yards receiving. But I think he needs 7 or 8 catches per game, and if the running game, since it struggles. We saw how he basically closed the game out. Germ did against South Carolina. I think he needs 3 to 5 touches in the running game because I think he can provide maybe a big play here or there. And what I mean is a chunk play, maybe a 10-yard run, a 20-yard run. And for this offense, that is a chunk play. And he can give you a big play there, maybe even pop a 50-yarder. So to me, Debo, as I call him, has to touch the football more. And then I think you sprinkle in Daniel Hill. And then, of course, you've got Lottie back, Isaiah Horton. And Horton wasn't a big factor in this last game. But I'll just say this, and this is a game that I remember a lot because it was one of the defining games in Saban's first year. And in my opinion, was probably the biggest win. And that was at home against Tennessee. And in that game against Fulmer's group, who was a top 10 team at the time, they came out throwing and kind of threw to set up the run and then did draws and traps and things of that nature. I think Alabama should do that against, OU in some cases because Alabama's been so good in the 2-minute drill all year at the end of halves. I wish they would just go up tempo and go 2-minute against Oklahoma and throw the football and then mix in the run a little bit. And I think they would have a good shot to move the football on OU. It's not going to be easy. And I think it's going to be still a very physical, blood and gut kind of game. But I think for Alabama to have better execution and better offensive production, an up-tempo, pass-first approach, and then just sprinkle in some run would be and a lot and swing passes, things out of the backfield. I think would be their best bet because I think OU, as far as tackling in the open field, and then their secondary is probably, if you want to say that it's not, I'm not saying they're bad at it, but I think that's where you can make some plays against a really, really good defense.
Yeah, it feels like just the way that Alabama is able to control things offensively and the rhythm that they potentially get into or the rhythm they don't get into against a really good defense is going to dictate a lot because Oklahoma's defense is really good. And Brent's had 2 weeks to figure out the way that he wants to attack. And they've seen some good offenses from, Ole Miss to Tennessee to other teams that they've played. They've gone up against a Texas team that was very talented. Texas was kind of middling and struggling at that point. So I don't want to call them a great offense at the time they played, but they've gone up against talent. And again, they're very good defensively. And if Alabama isn't, if they're not more sharp than they were for the LSU game, if they're not more sharp than they were for 3/4 of that South Carolina game, then you're in an absolute dogfight. If you can kind of stay ahead of things like Ole Miss did, then I think you've got a really good chance to see Alabama have a lot of success on offense. On the other side, I wonder, Mateer has looked better, but I don't know that he's looked as good as he did or maybe as good as was expected before he got banged up. I wonder on the other side what Oklahoma is able to do and conversely what Alabama is able to do to slow down an Oklahoma offense that has run the ball better but doesn't run the ball like one of the SEC elites or anything like that. Do they give up shot plays? Is Mateer able to burn them a few times, being effective with his legs and kind of improvising? Certainly questions on that side of the ball too. Of what it looks like. I know a lot of the focus is on what can Oklahoma's defense do to keep them in this game, but they're going to have to score some, unless the defense just comes out and plays insane and holds Alabama to 2 or 3 scores. Yeah, they're going to have to do some things offensively too to stick around and stay in this thing as well. I'll get right back to the video, but first, make sure that you are locked in on the Sleeper app. Use our code CFA for a 100% match up to $100 on the Sleeper app. Play the more or less game with us. Be part of the action live on the Power 2 every Wednesday at noon. So you can make some money with us. Check their terms of use because terms and conditions do apply.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt. I mean, I've made that point. I think that, Oklahoma, Alabama's had their struggles offensively, but OU hasn't, been great, tremendous either. And
Yeah.
Oklahoma has a young offensive line who's played better, especially lately, and they've run the football better, no question about it, in the last few weeks. But Mateer, he still hasn't looked right since he rushed back, I think, only after 3 weeks with the broken thumb against Texas. He certainly can run the football, and Alabama, to me, needs to spy him and needs to try to contain him and keep him in the pocket and make him make throws. The key is going to be Alabama needs to stop Oklahoma's run. And they did for the most part against LSU. They shut it down except for one 35-yarder. They seem to have one of those a game where they get misaligned and give up a run. But still, they've been really good in the red zone. And the funny thing is, though, both these offenses have been really good in the red zone as far as finishing drives. And we all know with Tate Sandell, Oklahoma has a kicker that, if they get within 60, he has a chance. So they kind of have that in their back pocket. Alabama's place kicking has been inconsistent. Oklahoma's has been tremendous. So that's one place where Oklahoma definitely has an advantage. But Alabama, the thing, if they can put, Mateer in a bind, he has tended to turn the ball over and throw it to you. And I think, and his mechanics are a little off. Now, for one game, I've learned this, man. In one game, you can, flip things over. I mean, a guy can have a great game. I brought back some bad Oklahoma memories from the 2013 Sugar Bowl. Trevor Knight, Steven Garcia. I've seen it happen, man, where these guys have their one shining moment as a quarterback against Alabama. The Kentucky QB right now, I mean, he had his one shining moment against the Tide as well. So that can happen. So you have to be prepared for that, no doubt about it. And so I just think Alabama, the key is going to be, continuing to build on what they've done defensively. And what we've seen in the last several weeks is we've seen Yonsei Pierre develop into an outstanding pass rusher. He was quiet in the first half against LSU, I thought, but then boom, second half, it just takes keep chopping wood. He gets the big sack to basically end the night for Nussmeier and hold him to a field goal, and then the strip sack late to seal it against Van Buren. So, but I'll just say, even with no matter what, I just mentioned, Zach Calzada and Steven Garcia and Trevor Knight. A guy can have a big one game in his career passing the football, but the key for Alabama is not to let that happen. You have to contain Satania. I think he's by far their best receiver. And again, if you put Mateer in some situations, and I think even when he's running the football, you got to tackle the football. You got to make him feel you. He has tended to turn the ball over. Just like I'll give an example, even in that Tennessee game you brought up, it's a great road win for Oklahoma. They almost blew that game because he made I still don't know what the hell he was doing. 4 minutes to go. They're running the ball well, and he throws an RPO, I guess, sidearms it into coverage, and it's picked off, and it gave Tennessee new life. So if you're Alabama, you just got to pressure him. You got to get in his face, and you got to make him turn the football over. The plus minus in this game is going to be huge because the defenses are both really good. Last week, and I ended up being wrong. I picked a higher scoring game. I believe I was like 37-27, Alabama over LSU. I'm taking Alabama 24-17 in this one because I think both defenses are really good, and it's going to come down to turning the ball over for it to. And I think if Alabama can force 2 or 3 turnovers and get field position out of them, I think they can take full advantage of it. And then again, Alabama has to come up. Whether I don't know, it doesn't. Look, Grubb is a very creative offensive coordinator. You just got to continue, and I think a lot of it is going to be adjusting on the fly during the game. I'll talk. I've talked about that all year on your show. What Grubb has done, where he'll, something's not working, and so you go to another option. He did that with Daniel Hill. against Tennessee and sparked the running game. He did it with Germ, sparking the running game against South Carolina. And then to close out the LSU game, nothing's working. So, hell, run Ty Simpson. And it worked. And so you just kind of have to, it's kind of like Lane Kiffin. Lane kind of made his bones and as Alabama's OC, and that's got him another opportunity to be a head coach. He's done great things at Ole Miss, and he used to do that. He was very good during going through the fire and adjusting during a game and figuring out matchups that would work. And Ryan Grubb shows some of the same stuff, and that's what you're going to have to do. And so in many ways, you come out with a script and a plan. But then if OU and Venables is a brilliant defensive coordinator, if he starts taking some things away, you got to counter. And so this is a coach's game, and I'm going to trust the Alabama coaching staff more than Oklahoma's. And then I also know this. I've already said earlier in the segment that certainly I think it may have, in hindsight, been good. It's not a wake-up call, but just, hey, you're gonna have to really have your nose to the grindstone and be locked in against this OU football team and this defense with your plan offensively. Make no mistake, Alabama remembers that OU ended their season last year, basically knocked them out of the playoffs. Now Alabama can return the favor because OU has to have this game even more than Alabama. If Alabama knocks off OU, their chances of making the playoffs are minuscule. Now, Josh Pate, who I respect a ton, he's picked Alabama, and he's picked Oklahoma to still make the playoffs at 9-3. But I wouldn't bet on that. We've seen the college football playoff rankings, and I know you follow it and covered Florida State the way you do. The ACC has not been kind to themselves the last 2 weeks.
No.
It basically played itself into a one-bid league, but still you can't assume that you're going to get 5 teams or even 6. I mean, do I think the SEC is good enough to do that? I do. But still, you've seen the college football playoff rankings that have come out. I think the SEC is going to get 4, and I think there's a possibility they could get 5. But if you put yourself in a position with 3 losses, you're going to be a nervous person coming out when they announce the brackets.
Yeah, and I think Texas factors into that too. If Texas splits their last 2 big games, we could have an argument of Oklahoma you mentioned the ACC, Oklahoma at 9-3 with let's call it a 3-point loss to Bama. Like, that's not a bad loss. Like, the number 10 or 11 team in the country should lose by 3 or more on the road against the number 4 team. So, like, that wouldn't be a bad loss. I think you'd have an argument of like 9-3 Oklahoma versus 10-2 Miami, right? Which one is more impressive? But 9-3 Texas trumps both of them, and because of the head-to-head, because one of those wins for Texas would be against the top 5 team in either A&M or Bama. I'm sorry, Georgia. So no, I agree with you. And then on the turnovers, I think you're spot on. Oklahoma's done a good job. I mean, Tennessee outgained them by 1 billion yards, but they capitalized.
That's the thing. Yeah, exactly.
You can get all the turnovers you want. I mean, you think back to that opener. Florida State muffs the punt. Bama gets the ball in plus field position. Doesn't score there at that moment. I thought Florida's going to win it. Florida State's going to win this game. Yeah, if Bama would have scored there to cut into the lead, it would have been different. Both teams do a good job outside of that opener of capitalizing on the mistakes. And Oklahoma did that really well. And so it goes both ways. Simpson gives them a short field. They got to go capitalize. They can't go kind of anemic on offense. And so the turnovers and then capitalizing on top of them, which Oklahoma did maybe the best in the country against Tennessee of doing that. Because, again, they got outgained by almost double and still found a way to win. I mean, if you're given those opportunities either way, or if you take the opportunity, however you want to paint that, you gotta maximize and you gotta go score, especially when you're on the road and you'd assume you get less opportunities because Bama's been less careless with the ball than Oklahoma's material has at times. So I think that's a big angle for it. Drew, where can people? I know you'll talk about this game for the next couple of days until it happens, and I know you'll talk about it afterwards. Where can people listen in?
Oh yeah, they can listen to me Monday through Friday, 8 to 10 Eastern time, your time, 7 to 9 Central. Talking ball. We've been talking tons of Oklahoma, Alabama this week. Like I said, I like the Tide 24-17, and then they can connect with us at our SoundCloud page. If you missed the show at 97.7 ESPN, that's 97.7 The Zone, and then 977ESPN.com. And like I said, it's kind of funny how football, the ebbs and flows. I was watching that Tennessee-Oklahoma game, And Tennessee went right down the field, scored. Looked like they were going to score again. And then we talked about the turnovers. OU scores on defense, and it completely flips the field and flips the game. And, and I thought from that point forward, Oklahoma kind of took control, even though, like you said, they gave up nearly 500 yards. So if Alabama's offensive line, and that's another thing, though, for one game, you can play at a very high level. If Alabama does that, if they're able to get movement in the running game, and again, they're not going to gash OU. I'll be shocked if they do, but if they could find a way, if you look at it at the end of the night, TJ, and Alabama's averaging 4.2 a carry, and they've hit 130, 140 yards, then I think Oklahoma's in big trouble, because that means Alabama stayed on the field and they were able to make some big plays throwing the ball vertically. So those are going to be some of the keys. But if Alabama can win this game, it's a huge step toward Atlanta. And if they get to Atlanta, then they're in the playoff regardless of the outcome, and then probably on a collision course with Texas A&M, even though that Texas A&M Texas game, depending on the outcome in Athens, Georgia, that's going to be a very interesting one.
Yeah. Drew, thank you for hanging out. Should be a ton of fun. We're winding down on this thing, and then we have the month and a half playoff too. So we're not anywhere close to done, but thanks for hanging out, buddy.
All right, man. Appreciate you.